Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the BuzzStream podcast. My name is Vince Nero. I'm your host, and today I'm thrilled to invite Garrett French to our podcast. If you don't know who Garrett is, he's been in the game for 25 plus years. He's the founder of Citation Labs, AI Tracker, Xofu, ZipSprout, among many other things, which maybe we'll get into. But Garrett is one of the foremost, I'd say, experts in SEO in general, but I think one of the things that Garrett does has always stood out to me is the way that he connects kind of these SEO, link building, digital PR, however you want to do it, these tactics to the customer and specifically the bottom line and how these things can work together. And I think that's kind of a very important thing, especially these days as people are kind of chasing AI citations and chasing links just for link's sake and traffic and vanity metrics and that sort of thing. It's important to keep that customer in mind, and obviously the bottom line is what's going to keep your job at the end of the day. So before we get into all that, I just want to remind people this is a great time to like, subscribe, share this stuff with your colleagues. The more that you can do that, the more I can have great guests on like Garrett. So Garrett, how you doing, man? Thank you so much for joining.
It is absolutely my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So like I said, Garrett, I think you have always done a great job of this. I remember meeting you back when I was with Siege Media. You spoke with Ross about this idea of citable elements on product pages and being able to get links to product pages. And that was kind of the first connection I think I made to there is this disparity between the way that SEOs and link builders think about this stuff where maybe you're contracted to just get organic traffic or get links, and there's not enough communication or through lines to kind of the bottom line. And for some people, it's no fault of their own. They're contracted to do this thing. But like I said in the intro, at the end of the day, if we're not impacting the bottom line, you're not going to have a job for very long. I would love to start with this idea of citable elements and product pages. Could you briefly explain this concept? Because I think it's going to kind of set the stage for a lot of the other stuff we talk about.
I have to go way, way back, Vince, and I love, I love that. I love doing that. Probably a little too much. I hope we have plenty of time. So really, we wanted our client sales pages to be as linkable as a resource page. So when I say resource page, I'm taking us all the way back to 2003 or 4, when we would make these incredible detailed guides that we would then try to get links to from links and resource pages. And so we realized that there were what at the time, now go with me back in time to the link, probably 2000, linker valued audiences. Maybe it was 9, it doesn't matter. Linker valued audiences. So the linkers would be the publishers who had resource pages, and then they were going to link to content that served their audiences that they valued. A lot of times it would be, seniors, for example. So we really started to ask the question, not so much how do we make sure we talk to seniors as an audience on every page of the website, because obviously that's going to not really fit or work very well. But we said, what made this type of content valued by linkers? And then how do we bring components of this or the values that this type of content enabled the linker to link to, and how do we put that onto a sales page? How do we make sales pages actually worth linking to? And this really cracked open the whole journey for us since then. And some of this journey has been, we really keep our clients longer when we build links directly to the sales pages and we show how the rankings of the sales pages go up. It's taken us out of conversations that are more pure digital PR or big brand. How do we get lots of visibility for brands? But we've stayed really focused on how do we make sure that this unit of offering from the client grows its visibility. And it's very complicated in enterprise where we have a brand, but then within the brand, there are all these offerings and each one operates as a business unit. Within the business unit, there's different offerings. And then within the offerings, there's different pages that reflect different benefits or subsets of the, it gets so complicated so fast that when you really try to, just increase brand visibility, you end up not really having anything to put into a report for the person you report to tell their boss where all the money went that they spent on visibility or link building, right? It just you have to stay focused in that place, right? Like you have to stay focused in that place of, as an agency owner, right? You have to stay focused in that place of enabling the person you report to explain why they need to spend more money using Citation Labs or ZipSprout or Xofu, whichever flavor they kind of came in on for visibility. So that's, I think I either over-explained or under-explained. I'm not sure which. Ask me more questions though, so I make sure I'm being useful.
Yeah, no, I do. I appreciate that explanation, because I think product pages are hard to build links to, hard to. I feel like you used to be able to get links from bloggers, and then all of a sudden, all the bloggers wanted money too. So like it became this very highly monetized thing. So some of the potential solutions were focusing a lot more on data, and incorporating data into your strategies. So you come up with a statistics post with your own data that you've mined through proprietary data, or you've done survey data. And now I think that jump into the product pages is where a lot of people, they probably stopped before that, where it was like you just create a statistics post and then you're kind of relying on journalists and researchers to search for these types of statistics, and you get links passively over time to something like that. I think that is maybe where there's still a lot of potential, but I think you have a very unique way of doing that, in that I think you look more to the customer problems and how can we solve these customer problems, and that kind of becomes the strategy. So let's talk about your decision-making analysis that you do, and kind of the customer research.
Yeah, this is really a very, very fun part. We're calling this decisioning efficiency, right? Like you're trying to enable a more efficient decision on behalf of your prospective clients, right? Right, whether they go with you or not. And so I think that's a really important starting point. It's a scary starting point for marketers. We need to make it easier for people to say no. What? That's terrifying, but we need to start there. Okay, you don't have to tell your boss that's what you're doing, and we don't usually talk about it like that. But you really do need to say what information on this page would be most useful to someone that's in the decisioning phase about whether to do or not do this, the transition or the activity that relates to this purchase, right? So a lot of our initial work is like locating in the context of the buyer, what are they doing? Why are they in the market? What problems are they trying to solve? Have they diagnosed their problems accurately? Do we have a way to help them diagnose that more efficiently or effectively that we could provide? These are the types of questions that we're really kind of starting with. Now, this is much easier in a B2B space, okay? Because it's there's a lot more specialization, role-specific specialization of the purchase decisioning committee. So if you're in a smaller, so we've been looking a lot at, nationwide service providers, local service providers, home service providers. This has been kind of a growing it's been a special, we've been working with these folks for a decade plus, but lately we've been getting more of these types of inquiries in. So we're really starting even there, though the decisioning committee isn't quite as complex for a B2C purchase. We're still seeing a lot of intent around things like people with very particular allergies or health related concerns, for example, when it comes to cleaning, or people that maybe there's another kind of layer of people that are that is a B2B layer for cleaning services. That would be the person whose job it is to turn the apartment over for rental for someone else, right? And so the questions that each one of these roles or types of folks would have are just very different one from another, right? And you do the same service, you use the same chemicals, but how you're positioning on your page are going to be very different, and the decisioning efficiencies, the information that's needed by the people that are making the decision can be very, very different. Now, so what do we do with all this? And that was a long way of describing the simpler, kind of decisioning arena of like a cleaning service versus like a enterprise computers, like actual hardware for
Right.
it gets very, like, the complexities are quite varied.
Yeah, the example that you gave me had many different versions of these kind of decision makers, and which yeah, I mean, to your point, like I think so, and I want to make sure that I'm grasping this again as well. So the idea is just like you're identifying the types of customers within each, set segment of your business with each product, but then also like the decision makers and the types of problems or questions they might ask that are going to lead them to your service.
The questions that let me reframe that a little bit. Number
Yeah,
one, we're rarely asked to come in and do everything for the entire company. So it's usually a division, business division person, and that we're going to do one look. Yeah.
just cleaning supplies or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, exactly. Garrett, we're not ready for all this yet, okay? Like, 'cause I come in pretty, I don't know if you know, I bring a lot of intensity with me where I go. But so one of the ways we're looking at kind of constructing how we think of information needs, right? Like what's the ideal amount of information that someone would have? Well, we think about what would a seasoned veteran who has solved this problem a number of times before, what questions would they have? What would they be asking? And so this isn't, it's 1,000 times easier with LLMs, okay? But it's not a crazy thing to ask. It's not a wild thing to kind of use as a starting point. And so we've done a lot of thinking. We've coined the notion of friction-inducing latent unasked questions. But we realized that another way to kind of spin that or flip that around was like, all right, well, what would the seasoned expert ask that basically no one else would know to ask? And that's going to give you a better sense of what types of information to put on the page. Let me give an example from your life, Vince, if you don't mind. But you just shared how you hosted a Thanksgiving, but this was after you hosted your mother's birthday. And so this was the second big family hosting event you had, and it went much smoother. It's because you knew what questions to ask.
New
You knew how to do things differently, right? And so Vince, going into his third big family event, well, would have much, if you went to go prompt an LLM about how do I, best take care of my family, you'd have a much different array of types of questions you would ask. And so what we're really trying to land on is what is the array of inquiries that a very seasoned professional would have if they were the one buying the service. So the person that's been running a cleaning business for 20 years wants to hire somebody to clean their house. What would they ask, right? What would a used car salesperson ask if they were that's been doing it for 20 plus years? What would they ask when they went to go buy a used car? And so that's the level of informational inquiry that I think kind of starts to define what is. Can you put all that on one page of your website? No, of course not. But you're trying to come up with tables and representations of this kind of information. Does it all live on the? This is where we have a lot of nuance and we have to kind of figure things out, because usually you can't really mess with an enterprise's sales page. You don't have you're not invited into that particular Thanksgiving table. You're not asked to eat at those tables. But so there are ways to address that if you can't just actively make additions to a page or add FAQs. But we are part of our starting point for what content should we add to a page, which then is building into where do we go to build links or drive visibility, comes from this place of what does an ideal amount of information look like for making a best possible decision. There's
So
got to be a faster way to say that, though, Vince, but help me out here. That was a really, really long way to say, but that's what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I would think that is what everybody hopes to accomplish with SEO. And my question, I guess, then is like, how I don't, it's clear what the difference is between this and just doing kind of traditional keyword based research, right? Like, but does kind of traditional keyword based SEO kind of research, does that have a place in this?
For sure, for sure. Yeah, we still use as a starting point what we call link gap analysis. So we built out a tool called Link Launch, and so we're looking at uh, potential target pages to build links to. We're looking for what keywords are these ranking for, who's ranking against these. Now, obviously, that surface, the SEO surface, the organic 10 links, or the 10 blue links type of results are going to be the phone book. They're going away. It's sad. I love them. Like, that's where I feel the most at home, right? But they're going away for sure. But we still use that as a component of understanding relative competition in a given space. What does the link graph look like for this body of keywords or body of information needs? But really, we do, and this is the hard kind of gap, is like, hey, you know, as SEOs, and we've really limited ourselves based on where we see keyword demand right now, which isn't always the information that's needed to make a great decision. And so, because a lot of the keyword demand is driven by a problem I would like to solve, and a belief I have that maybe this thing is the way to solve that, or this item. And so we're really trying to crack that place open. And there's not a lot of good language to describe that we've found. There's not a
Mhm.
lot of, I don't know what the KPIs are for. And then frankly, we've gotten pushback. Well, it's one recently. It was a pitch we were doing with a CMO, but they're just like, hey, GTFO, the bottom of the funnel. GTFO, the BOFU here, guys. You don't know me. You don't know our space. We just want top of funnel visibility. We don't, everybody, so that's the other piece, is we really do we try to start at the bottom of the funnel and kind of work up. But we do find that when we do that, it can be a lot. I bring
Right.
a lot to the table, as I mentioned, but then, especially if you have a CMO in a big company that doesn't actually understand, no offense, I'm not calling anybody out, but doesn't understand the bottom of the funnel for all the various service lines. I mean, you're all of a sudden talking about things that you need an SME to give you feedback on, and the CMO is just like, no, no, get at, like, I don't know what you're talking about. You need to come back up to leads. We got to come back up to leads,
Right.
and we are trying to live and die by leads, of course, and visibility and impact. But it can be tough to kind of close those gaps. I personally find it very difficult to close those gaps. I know other people are very good at those things, but like, explaining myself has never been my strong suit, oddly enough, as a marketer, right? But excuse me, keep going.
Well, all right. So let's draw some through lines because I want to make
Thank
sure that
you.
I'm not misrepresenting some of this stuff too. So, like going back to the citable elements thing, does any of this research then become things, and you kind of alluded to this, does any of this research that you're doing from the customer and decision making then become things you can use in your link building or PR efforts?
100%. 100%. One of my favorite examples here is in an industrial computer manufacturer, or actually, I think they're an OEM. It doesn't matter. We worked with their customer service logs. They put them into a notebook LM so we could query against those, and we were able to kind of isolate. This is where we're just the link builders. We really like to have an SME internally who can say, yes, this is actually a thing, or it isn't. but
Right.
but
Right.
we're still able to get, as much closer to this place of useful things to say. It's like genuinely useful. But we found that there was a big disconnect between engineers and the in-house engineers and the in-house procurement team. So the engineers weren't doing all their homework. They would just say, "Hey, we need 5 or 10 of these," or whatever they'd have, and they'd send that to procurement. And they left procurement with a lot of questions still. So then there's a lot. We ended up, from the notebook LM, we could see that there were a lot of inquiries from procurement to the client, when really the client didn't know this information. They were kind of like, they needed more from their engineer. So we didn't do any studies here, but it begs a study, right? Like around when there are slowdowns, we don't want to point fingers, but gosh, it sure seems like the engineers aren't quite doing as much as they could. You wouldn't say it like that. Please, nobody take marketing advice from me. Don't say it like that. But we found we found the freaking problem, and it was in this place where the engineers weren't explaining themselves. So what do you do as a business? Well, you ask, how do we help solve this problem, right? Because it's clearly a problem. And so you're going to work a little harder with the engineers, and you're going to give the procurement team a better sense of what we know as the OEM provider of these products, and then what you're going to have to ask the engineers. But here's how you talk to the engineers. Here's how you ask them. Because if you don't ask an engineer right, what happens? Nothing. That's the answer. That you're not going to get going to get anything valuable out of that. So where we landed was, gosh, we need to have more, almost an API or like a language
Mhm.
translator on our pages, right? Like,
Yeah.
so procurement, if you're on our website and you're curious about these things, well, it's probably because you need to ask your engineers these things. So we're better able to isolate the types of information that in our decision makers, and this is past the decision. The decision has been made, right? We're just trying to get money at this point, but it's still in funnel, right? Technically, we haven't made money yet, but when we have this participant in the purchase, how do we reduce friction? How do we make their job easier? And it isn't about explaining topically what an XY. And this is the thing
Right.
that kills me about SEO. I love SEO. It's you know, don't get me wrong, but when we focus on topical relevance, we lose the plot, or whatever that phrase is. We lose the script. No, what is it?
Yeah. I think the
Anyways,
plot. Yeah, I think it's
the
right.
plot.
Yeah.
We lose the plot a little bit. Nothing
Yeah.
against that plot, right? Like, we want to rank for these big topics and these big keywords, and we want the traffic, rah, rah, rah. But also, if we're not reducing frictions for the people that are actually trying to solve the problems with our services or our products on the pages where they buy them, I think we're not doing our jobs. And we can build links to that stuff too, Vince. Like, that stuff becomes a very citable element around, okay, this is a very specific table that helps the procurement team talk to engineering. Is it maybe that's part of a bigger study we've done, and then we're going to have a little chunk that goes on each offer, individual product. So, but you can still build links to that much more readily than just the product itself, right? Because this is the stuff that you
Yeah.
see in Reddit. These are the complaints that you see in Reddit, is this friction between procurement and engineering, right? So, like, you want to live in that place where you're helping reduce these frictions, helping both sides understand, one side understand the other. I'll let you talk now. I'm so sorry.
No, no, and I think the kind of creative spark then becomes how, presenting those problems in a way that yeah, you can get links. Like, to your point, like, is it a big study, or is it just a table and you're reaching out to? I mean, and I would assume when you get this kind of niche, for lack of a better word, or descriptive with the problems you're solving, you probably limit the amount of outreach you can do, right? The amount of websites you're going to get links from, but the ones you're getting links from are those super relevant links that are probably going to really move the needle. And at the end of the day, like, you could probably point to those to your CMO and say, like, look, our audience is probably spending a lot of time on these two sites that we got links from, right? So
And
to me, I mean,
like,
go ahead.
if there are engineering coaching firms, right? Like, if that happens to be a thing, or procurement coaching, maybe there isn't that. I don't know. But you would look for potentially those types of publishers, perhaps. You would look immediately to your existing people that send you business, and who's your allies in the verticals that you work in. And is there a way to kind of cross promote with those guys? You would be sponsoring the procurement webinars, the niche specific procurement and engineering conventions and webinars and publications and trade magazines for visibility there as well. But yeah, absolutely. The opportunity pool is quite small, but when you
And that's okay.
are, yeah,
Yeah.
it's preferred. It's much easier. Sometimes constraints are nice to have. Yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, and I think it's probably, say you're an agency and you're listening to this and you're like, well, my client just wants links. I mean, it's a tough conversation to have to say like, yeah, we got you 2 links this month when you wanted 25 or something, but like, look at these links. I mean, that's where the conversation then has to start to become more along the lines of like, we're not just getting you links to get you links. What is
for
the
sure,
real goal at the end of the
for sure.
day? And I
Vince,
think that's kind of
that's
what.
why we started reporting on link impact. That is 100% why we said yeah, we could talk literally all day long about metrics of the linking page, the linking website, and there's good ones and there's bad ones. Yeah, but
Tell me more
but
about the link impact. Is this
what
okay?
happens after
Yeah.
you build the link? And so it's that specific place where we really try to move the conversation and move the focus, uh, because that's what we found helps us keep our jobs and helps the people that we report to keep their jobs, right? Because we're focused on impact as opposed to getting granular about the DA or whatever of a given website. It, you know, do you does that close the deal with no, a lot of our more traditional steeped in SEO folks have a tough time making that leap into impact. And a lot of this, Vince, we don't talk about impact very much and very, very particularly and with a lot of specificity. But when we can say, hey, here's the page we built links to, and here's the control group of, of pages on your website that are similar but that didn't get any links, and you could see them trending flat, and our visibility is going up for the page we built links to.
Hmm.
When you can isolate impact that way and say it was these links that we built, these 17 from you didn't like the DA of this one, remember? You got really upset with that one. You asked us to do another link because this DA was so low. Well, guess what? It it didn't matter. This isn't, and that's not what we should be looking at. So I'm not saying give us carte blanche. We don't, we can't just go. We're not trying to get shitty links out here. We're not trying to get PBNs, but we are. Let's really look at what happens after we build the links. What happens on the pages we built links to, and when we can show when we track control group on a site and a control group of competitors as well. Say, hey, here's how we're trending against our control group on-site control group plus competitive control group, the whole conversation shifts. You all of a sudden have a compelling narrative, a compelling story to talk about with the CMO.
Yeah.
This is the
Yeah.
game. I mean, this is where you have to live, right? You're not like, hey, we got a link from a DA 99. What does the CMO care about that? What are you giving the CMO there to be able to keep their job?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
they're under attack too. This is one of the most frequently, you know, what is it, knocked out of. I don't have don't quote me on this and don't call me out based on my made up statistics here. But the CMOs are the C-suite individual that loses their job the most frequently. And if you're not contributing to the stability of their job continuity, then you're not contributing to your job continuity either. And so you need to be very clear about ROI of link building. And this is we learned this over 15 years of being an agency. We're into our 15th year now, and this is why we started focusing on impact reporting, link impact reporting. Here's the pages in our campaign. Here's how they're doing versus your control group. I mean, it seems like it should have been a thing all along. It just that I know of hasn't really been. We've seen some examples in the wild of folks doing this, and it's not outlandish, it's not crazy. But when you focus this way, rather than, and I'm not saying you don't do digital PR, but big swings, you got to keep taking those. Medium swings, you got to keep taking those. Don't worry, you can't always build links directly to sales pages. You can't just build. You shouldn't. But if you're doing all of these things together, you are cooking with gas. That's when the magic really happens, is when you put all these pieces together, for sure.
And just to clarify, the upward trajectory you're talking about is traffic when you're talking link impact score?
Correct.
Okay.
Is rankings that align with
Rankings.
keyword demand for keywords that we know the traffic for, right? So yeah, it
Got it. Got
is
it.
visits to the page relevant to a specific keyword. Now,
Okay.
let's talk about the elephant though. AI overviews and LLMs, because has everything shifted? Yes, it has. Is it just link building? No, kind of not, but kind of not, right? So we could push there, but you're running things, Vince. I'm gonna.
Well, all
What
right.
else
I
should we
want to
talk about?
I want to want to put a button in the citable elements, kind of creating creative content that really solves a need, because I really like this idea of creating something that's hyper specific, seemingly hyper specific, and solving a problem. Some of the most creative and impactful campaigns that I've seen, you could call them link building, you could call them digital PR campaigns that I've seen, are the ones that are super useful, right? And I think that is something that people in the industry strive for, but come at it in different ways. And there's repeatable campaigns that you can do, your city index studies, like things that you can like rely on. They're not particularly useful, but they get you links. Where well, let's
They're
just
useful in
let's
that
call it as it
sense,
is.
but yes.
Yeah. But for the end user, right? Like, I don't think anyone's going there and is like, oh, I'm going to take a vacation to this place because it's the best place to go running or whatever.
Yeah.
I but and maybe there are, but I think what I'm getting at is like there are campaigns that I getting back to Will Reynolds. I remember Will, like one of the first conferences I ever went to. I remember hearing Will talk about like um, it was like a IRS form that they kind of simplified, or they made some type of calculator or something for a really confusing IRS form, and like that became one of their best drivers of traffic and links. And
Mm.
it was just like this simple kind of thing, that the simple question or problem that the core customer was running into, where they're just like, I don't understand this thing. And so they made this thing, like, and it didn't have, all the sexiness that other campaigns might have, but it solves this need. And lo and behold, it caught on. And I could think of another one, actually. I had someone on the podcast, Sage Singleton from ClearLink. Sage told me this great campaign they ran where there was this bill, this act that was happening where like a lot of people in around the country were going to lose wireless. Maybe it was like a subsidized like wireless, say, that you got free internet or something. They were going to lose it because of this government action. And so one of her client sites it was like an internet, comparison site. And it was basically like, okay, we're going to put together this tool that lets you find cheap replacement internet providers for these specific people that are losing the internet. And like the pitch to journalists became, this is this thing that's happening, and like, here's all the people that are impacted. But the value that they're providing is, here's how an easy way you can just look it up and boom, you get your new wireless. So to me, it's like connecting the dots to the customer like that. It makes so much sense. And I know sometimes it can be feel like a big swing, but
For
like at the
sure.
end of the day, the ones that connect, man, like they can have big impact.
Utility is or helpfulness. We're taught by Google to make helpful content, and yet we're given no like formulas or rubrics or guidance around what helpful actually means. And so we've really pushed heavily into that space of trying to formulate what does helpful look like? What does it mean? And so we've really, I'd like for us, it's a lot of decisioning efficiencies, reducing a sense of risk, increasing or decreasing the time it takes to arrive at a decision. And honestly, this is what a lot of LLMs are already like. They don't need us, right? Like they can speculate a lot into these places. But when you get granular about a very particular offering that a client has, there are still going to be a lot of areas that LLMs end up hallucinating into, right? Or best guessing over, or not really having detailed knowledge about. And so that's kind of where we feel like the most bang for the buck from from what can we add to the page to make it appear higher in or get cited more frequently in LLMs, hopefully get the brand mentioned more. And then also, what can we build links to directly and what's going to genuinely be used? I do think there's some opportunity, depending on the size of the client, to be looking across, a division that, let's say, has 3 business units. They all kind of work with the same client or type of ICP. Well, doing a study that really does look across all of these, but then is trying to come up with formulas that could be extensible, decisioning formulas, like how do you make decisions about what to do when this happens, and then getting those formulas and working them all the way down to the page level, where you're not necessarily then getting, you're not necessarily starting from the bottom up. That's my favorite. That's my favorite way to do it, because you really bottom up. You get, you start in the soil, the context of this thing that's for sale, right? We're SEOs. SEOs are SEOs, and we're like, we think top down, topic, and then everything else is just kind of like noise, right? But it's that place of noise, the edge case. That's where the real value, I think, a lot of times comes from, when we are looking for specific types of content that is going to be citable by humans, not just LLM, but citable, and putting it on a particular sales page. It has to be useful, though. It has to be helpful. And that could mean you're telling people not to buy this thing. That's what helpful means. That's what actually helpful means. It's scary. It's scary.
Yeah.
It's scary for us as
Yeah.
marketers. And don't tell your CMO that I said that. Like, please. I'll never have a chance to speak with them. But that's where the genuinely useful kinds of information comes from. If you're enabling someone to not choose this thing, now you could suggest other things on your website, right? But you're saying, hey, don't click here now, because you need to do these things before you click here now.
Right.
You just don't. You're
Right.
going to waste your time. Like,
Yeah.
acknowledging that, I think, is where trust really comes from, and really trying to take that role in the lives of your market, in the life of your market, in the context of your market, for people that are visiting your website. That's where I want my marketing to live. I mean, nobody's asking me for that, though, Vince, right? Like, they're not like, hey, put more friction on my sales pages, please. Like, nobody says that. Nobody really wants that. But it is the place where, probably the most useful things to say, the most citation worthy content is going to likely be, you can spin it so that it's like, hey, we're best for, or best when. So it's not just like, don't do it if. I just say
Yeah.
things the wrong way, because I'm the terrible marketer. Like, that's not my strong suit. Figuring out where the frictions are, that's what I love. And I think that's one of the things that LLMs enable us to do at scale more easily. Certainly, the more we can ground what we would say on a particular page from the complaints and issues that our customers have with this specific offering, the better we're doing at creating citation-worthy content and serving our market. And I think that's what Will Reynolds landed on in the example you gave, right? Is like, hey, this page on the IRS website is very difficult. We don't understand what it means. So let's make it easier to understand. Let's build a tool to make that easier to function with. But now LLMs can do that much more quickly too. So we're still in this era where, like, are we really solving a problem that needs to be solved any longer? And so it's still a fun, it's still just a delightful place to work. I love my job. This has been the last 2 years of LLMs and AI's ascent has just been absolutely breathtaking and wonderful. I feel more excited than ever about coming into work. But it's definitely a challenge around, what do we say? What do we put on client pages that is going to be useful and that's going to be, seen as relevant, right? Like, have entities in it that an LLM would expect, but then also be uniquely useful, uniquely valuable. It's you kind of have to solve it fresh each time, but LLMs make it much easier to solve that type of thing now. It's just getting SMEs on board to get granular down to this specific page, and that can be tricky. We're still solving for that, frankly, Vince. But go.
Yeah. Well, and I want to be cognizant of your time. I know you got to jump off here, but
Sadly, I wish I had another 45 to 60 minutes easy.
well, the one question here is are you looking at answers from AI to make sure you're filling in those gaps that AI isn't able to answer or is hallucinating? You mentioned that, or that made me think of that.
Yeah, for sure.
That,
So when we're building out, we call them tracking-worthy prompts, Vince. But when we're building out a tracking-worthy prompt, this is a prompt from the perspective of an expert user that's really trying to, and we use AI to make these too. So this is why the more insight we can get from an SME, the better. Anyhow, so when we have this kind of expert level prompting, then you can take the outputs and then you put that in front of an actual real SME and say, what is wrong here?
what is
inaccurate?
Yeah.
And it isn't, calling it a hallucination is a little, it's like, what is it glossing over? What does it still not really understand that it's not speaking to? And I think that's kind of a key distinction to make is it could be, it's really more like, where is it inadequate? And sometimes it's a pure hallucination, not super often, especially not with Gemini, which is just coming out kicking a lot of ass. I do see it making mistakes. I'm not trying to say it's the best in the whole world. I do think it is, but I'm not trying to say that. I'm just kidding. I'm being silly, but I do like it. I do really like it. But that's those outputs from Gemini, from the AI overviews, are what you really want to be examining. But almost more specifically, what are the citations on when it's saying these things? Because that's the second layer of work here. Because we're calling it citation optimization, but we're really trying to say, what are the documents that are being called up, and then how do we interact with the publishers of such documents, whether it's us or a publisher that we could engage with potentially, so that what they're saying is a more favorable or more full in its expression of information needed, right? So there's some missing information on these pages, and we know that from having validated the absence with an SME. So now we can go to this organization, this publisher, and say, hey, you missed something. You didn't realize this, and so you're leaving this out, and so your page is deficient in some way. Now, you usually are going to have to people aren't updating their websites that much anymore, so you're often getting people who are, so you're moving into the gray area of link building, or you're buying at this point. Yeah, we haven't really traditionally done that, so we're kind of starting to have to learn into that space. We've really tried to be link earners, but when you can see exactly who's being cited, and the types of pages, and what they're saying, and you need to be visible on those pages, well, you gotta do what you gotta do, Ben.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Google does make any efforts to curb that kind of stuff.
They have to, and they absolutely, I'm sure, will, right?
Yeah, but we'll see if, how this all plays out and rolls out. I'm sure, again, like if you have the customer in mind, I think you can do no wrong. Your approach.
Amen. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's kind of been, I think, the messaging that I've been trying to push during this AI influx. So it sounds like, you using a lot of the stuff we talked about today, I think is going to be very beneficial for people. Garrett, again, I know you got to jump off. I want to thank you so much for coming on. I want to make sure people check out all the stuff you got going on at Citation Labs, Xofu, that's XOFU.com. What am I forgetting? Citation Labs,
Xofu, local link building and local community visibility, which is instrumental and very impactful on local rankings and AI visibility as well. But yeah, all the stuff, all the things.
I'll put links to this stuff.
Thank you so much.
Garrett's doing a million things, all of it great. Check him out on LinkedIn. If you have any questions about any of this stuff, comment on my videos that I'm posting, and I'll make sure Garrett gets you an answer.
For sure. I can't wait.
Yeah, this has been great, Garrett. I really appreciate the time. I know you're a busy man, so.
Vince, this really brightened my day. I am a busy man, but I was a little sad today. I was going slow. You gave me a lot of, I just was. It's snowy here. It's
got
cold.
Some fuel.
Like this, now I can go get back to work. So
nice, man.
Thank you, Vince. It was really fun. I really enjoyed speaking with you today. Thank you.
Yeah, likewise. And to all those listeners out there, thank you all and good luck.
Thanks, guys.